All right, let's talk about axles. We got this 1986 Airstream about a year ago, and knew that 35 years of these axles were not going to work if they needed replaced, because the rubber inside of them goes bad. And so I got all excited because I looked under, and in the front axle was replaced. In fact, it was only 3 years old. So I was pretty stoked about that, and I thought, okay, cool, now I don't have to buy axles and replace them. Until I looked at the back one, and it was not replaced, it was original. So this year, we decided replacing that back axle was going to be one of the first things we did. So I contacted Colin Hyde, which is who all the Airstream people tell you to contact, and to get some axles. And I sent him a picture of the axle sticker that was on the front axle, and so that he could match that and we could have it to replace the one. Unfortunately, when he got back to me, what I found out was that the axles both needed to be replaced. Basically what happened is the sag over time had happened, and at one point the previous owners had to get a new axle, and instead of replacing both of them, they just matched the sag in the old one with a new one. So the new axle was lower to the ground than we really would want. And in fact, Colin said we really need, a raised axle, or at least that's what he recommended, because with such a long trailer, there is a lot of potential for bottoming out. And so that's what we did. In fact, he said that the axle that had been put on 3 years ago was a 10-degree angle, because that matched the other one. Originally, it was closer to like a 22-degree angle, and what we got was a 32-degree angle, so that we have lifted it. So basically, we have gone from our axles, or this piece of our body hitting about here, to now up above the wheels. And that is going to give us a whole lot more ground clearance, and allow us to go places we could not go. All right, a train is going, and that's super annoying, so I'll be back in a second. Okay, so a couple things about replacing these axles. First of all, I had some incredible help from guys in my church, some friends that have a better garage and a whole lot better tools than me, and I don't think it would have gone well if I'd have done it myself. And so I guess the first thing I would say is I watched a bunch of YouTube videos about how to replace these axles, and it looks really easy. It looks pretty simple. 2 bolts on this side, 2 bolts on the other side. Use some floor jacks to get them up and down, and no big deal. Yeah, no, that's not how this went. We started out on a Sunday afternoon about 3 o'clock, and we didn't finish until after 11 that night, doing both of these axles. Primarily a couple things. First off, old rusty bolts are hard to get off, and some of these are specifically hard to get to. And so we had to use a torch and cut some of the bolts off. So that was a challenge. But a couple things I want to tell you, at least about my Airstream itself. One thing I didn't expect, because in all the videos I had watched, everybody had 2 bolts that were coming out to put that axle on. Well, in mine, both axles had stud bolts that were welded and coming straight down. And so you have the holes on the sides of the new axle, and you have holes going up in the new axle, which is like what you use to put on a lift kit if you're going to do a lift kit. Well, in my case, there were stud bolts there, so I actually had to bolt them up into that as well, or use a nut there. And so that I wasn't expecting. The good thing about that was it kind of forced them into the right spot, and so we knew where they had to go. But also, you had to be careful, because one of them broke off as we were trying to get it off of there, and it was kind of hard to get to. So in my case, I thought maybe it was just the new axle that some trailer company put on, and they already put the wrong angle on there, and so maybe they did that, but the original one was on there as well. So I don't know, maybe other Airstreams don't, but mine had those stud bolts that were coming down from the frame, welded into the frame. So that was something. It was more than just 2 bolts on each side. The other thing is, just like I've seen in other people's, the holes did not line up for the new axles. The space did, so the axle has to, you know, fit up into that space, and some people have had to cut that and make it wider. My space was fine, but one of the holes we did have to kind of torch and cut a little extra hole to be able to get that in. That wasn't any big deal, but something we had to do. Really, the biggest trouble was getting the bolts off. The other thing I'll mention, in case you're not aware of this, when I contacted Colin for the axles, they sent us a model of Monroe shocks that we could buy on Amazon to go with it for these new shocks. One thing you need to know, at least in our case, the new shocks, the bolt did not fit the Airstream, so we had to use the old bolt that was there. And not only that, the only way to get them to reach to this bolt right here was to load them. So we couldn't put them on with just the axle. We actually had to put the tires on and get them off of the ramps so that we could have load on there to get those to reach. Otherwise, it felt like the shocks were just not long enough. And so initially I was frustrated by that. That wasn't a problem. You just loaded them up and they fit just fine. That was our experience. The wiring was not a huge deal, although the old wiring of the trailer certainly didn't want to take solder very well, and so it was a little bit of a hassle, but not any major deal. But ultimately, we're really excited to give it a shot. All I've done is pull it home since then. But it sits so much higher, which gives us a lot more ground clearance. And I'm excited that it'll be riding better and braking better and doing everything just a little bit better with these two. For us, the cost for those 2 axles was about $1,600 shipped, and I had to drive into Kansas City, Kansas to a trucking company to have them loaded up on a trailer that I borrowed. So it all worked just fine. But anyway, that's my experience with putting on new axles. I hope that it goes much easier for you. I've seen videos where they did it like on the side of the street and it was a couple hours and they were done. Awesome. That's not how ours went. I would have never gotten them off with my impact wrench or a breaker bar. We needed torches and it took us a lot of time. But they're on there and I'm pumped to give it a shot. Anyway, thanks for checking this out. Like always, you know, like the video, subscribe, comment, do whatever. And I'm going to keep bringing you Airstream videos, at least about Stella the Excella here, as we continue to do some projects and get ready to go camping this summer. Thanks.